They were the most gifted men and women of their age, powerful, passionate, and unyielding. For more than 1,000 years, they ruled the Western world, conquering enemies, building opulent cities, and living lives of decadent grandeur. The Roman Empire has long captured the fantasies of the modern world. Hollywood has recreated Rome's pagan palaces and public revelry. Its cruel and cunning conquests, and its insatiable lust for life.
Remember, I want you to forget me, please.
Forget? How? I can never be more far away from you than this.
The real Roman Empire could never be duplicated again. The ancient civilization stretched across 3 continents, from Britain down to North Africa, across Western Europe to parts of Asia, the Middle East, and beyond. It was an empire that set the standard for architecture, law, and military might. But it was the Roman people themselves, from countless countries and cultures, who personified the power and glory of the once thriving empire. The origins of this lost civilization are steeped in myth and legend. Most Romans believed their ancestry began along the banks of the Tiber River in a region now known as Italy. In the 8th century BC, the daughter of the Latin king Numitor bore twin sons named Romulus and Remus. But the king's brother feared the infants would cheat him out of the royal throne. In a fit of rage, he tossed the twins into the frigid river. Legend says the brothers were eventually rescued by a she-wolf who suckled them to health. By 753 BC, Romulus and Remus were grown men. They set the foundation of a new city called Rome. But the brotherly bond didn't last for long. Romulus killed Remus during a petty family quarrel, making Romulus the sole ruler of Rome. The followers of Romulus eventually settled on one of the 7 hills that made up the new city.
We're here in the Palatine, the edge of the Palatine, overlooking the river, the Tiber River, with the Capitoline Hill to one side and the Aventine behind us. And the site of Rome is a function of the relationship between the river and between the various hills around it. The river controlled the crossing, any trade that was going north-south. The hills provided a naturally fortified place where people came together to put their communities up here on top of the hill.
In ancient times, Italy was a region of great cultural diversity. Various tribes, such as the Greeks, Sabines, and Latins, eventually melded together to become one race of people, the Romans. The early Romans lived in small communities which grew into city-states. Most of these primitive people lived together in these surviving grass huts and were ruled by kings from the wealthiest families. But 50 years after Romulus founded his city, a growing tribe of people conquered the fractured communities and became the ruling monarchy. These were the Etruscans. The Etruscans were sophisticated people who created exquisite paintings and pottery. They also built elaborate burial tombs, for they believed in eternal life after death. But the Etruscans were also brutal rulers who rained terror upon the other Roman people. In 509 BC, after over 200 years of hostile oppression, a group of Roman aristocrats ousted the Etruscan monarchy. In its place, they created a new government, the Roman Republic, a republic that would grow beyond anyone's wildest dreams. It was the dawn of a new era. Gone were the days of tyrannical kings. The power was no longer in the hands of one person. The new government was run by two councils. These magistrates shared power over the republic by making laws and overseeing legal cases. New councils were elected each year by a committee of senators who made decisions on government policy. The Roman Republic had two classes of citizens: the plebeians, Rome's general populace who were merchants, craftsmen, and farmers, and the patricians, the elite class who held political power.
Like so much else that the Romans did, it was largely unplanned. There was no constitutional convention. There were no Jefferson or Madison or Franklin. There was no written document. The overthrow of the last Etruscan king meant that Rome established a republic. But the ironic thing about that is that the power of the consul, of each of the consuls, was basically modeled on that of the Etruscan king whom they'd overthrown. The difference was, and the major difference is that there were two.
The plebeians complained that the new system of government was not much better than the old system. Although plebeians were allowed to vote, only the patricians were allowed to run for political office. In 471 BC, the plebeians created a tribune, in which 10 men were elected to represent their class against any political oppression by the consuls or patricians. In 450 BC, a system of laws called the 12 Tables was set up to protect the rights of every citizen. Over the centuries, law became a prestigious profession. Cicero, a man from a modestly wealthy family, became one of Rome's most celebrated lawyers and orators.
His parents were not noble, they were not in the Senate. He's one of the few people who manages to obtain that all on his own. He is the finest orator in Rome. He's the lawyer everyone wants. And in an age when everyone is being sued and litigated against for various reasons, Cicero is the man you go to. This makes him extremely valuable and an ally of all sorts of powerful people.
Like a modern lawyer, Cicero was a crafty public defender who played up the drama in the courtroom. During one of his trials, he hired orphans off the streets to pose as the starving children of a woman he was defending against her husband. Cicero addressed the jury.
I will focus only on my client's innocence today, and thus I will completely ignore the fact that the prosecutor in this case is an infamous philanderer who beats his wife and steals from innocent grandmothers.
Hotshot attorneys demonstrated their merits by winning legal cases, but most Roman men would demonstrate their worth on the battlefield. From the 5th to the 2nd century BC, Rome had expanded its influence beyond the borders of Italy. Each of the two consuls built up a powerful army, divided into legions of men from various classes. The Roman legions evolved into the fiercest fighting machines the world had yet seen. In their initial quest to plunder territories of their wealth, these soldiers of fortune were on their way to Romanizing the world. Over time, the territories they conquered became provinces of Rome.
As the Roman Empire expands, the provinces are always important because they bring in more booty. The Roman system is not, early on, is not to conquer, to make people citizens and to tax them. It's to simply lead the provinces for everything they possibly can, and all this wealth ends up back in Rome.
By the 2nd century BC, the Roman army had conquered most of the Mediterranean basin, including Greece, parts of North Africa, Spain, Asia, and the Middle East. Over time, the consuls elected governors to oversee each province. Eventually, most of the people within the provinces were allowed to become Roman citizens.